welcome. Phone's just disconnected. Hey, here we go. Right, let's get started today. So today we are going to be kicking off with some refactoring. What I'm going to quickly do is, this might work out a little bit easier, is just reset the resolution. I think this is the right one. We're going to set this down to like that, maybe. Oh no, we don't want to do that. Oh, that was ugly. Resolution, let's go to that one. Nope, it's not working for me. Yeah, that might be better. That might be a better zoom for people watching the screen. Excellent. Anything else? I can just zoom in a bit with the content. Right, so what we're doing today, that looks blurry. Don't like it. Do not like that. That is not pretty to look at. Go back to default and I'll zoom in on the content itself. We are going to view appearance, zoom the IDE into maybe 150. We'll 150 it. We're going to 150 it. So what we're doing today is we are carrying on with our DigiHire application, but what we're going to do with it is, let's go to 150 or 175. There we go. We're going to, last time we did lots of MVC stuff, right? We were building the application, very much standard MVC. We got roots in a, more of a Steve way, I suppose. Let's say it was our opportunities. We've got an index controller. We're running a query, we're returning resources, but there's no architectural structure, right? There's nothing other than a little bit of abstraction going on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we can split this out into perhaps something more domain-driven design-ish. And we'll call it DDD adjacent. It'll be whatever's going to work for our use case. That's the idea. I'm a big fan of DDD in the right scenario, but I'm also a big fan of making sure that things work for the application that you're actually building, right? So what we're going to do is, let's just make sure that I have the latest version. There we go. And what I've done, if I come over to Notion, is see if I can zoom. Can I zoom? Can I zoom on Notion? Apparently not. Can I zoom in on the page? No, I cannot. So what I'll do is I'll share this in the chat quickly, and if you are struggling to read it, I do apologize, but apparently it does not let me zoom in. So what can you do? So DigiHire is a back-end focused job platform. We covered that a few videos ago, right? What we're going to do, we're going to structure this in a kind of a domain-driven design-ish sort of way. We've got a few main domains. We've got identity, hiring, communication, finance, and analytics. So what this is going to be, identity, that's your authentication. Instead of having an auth domain, it's identity. It's, it's a bit more kind of encapsulating of what you're trying to do. You're identifying a user, you're accessing your identity, you're accessing aspects of the identity domain at that point. Hiring, anything to do with hiring and jobs. If it's a position that you're applying for, it's going to be within hiring. Once you have applied for a role, you're going to want to look at some sort of communication. You might get an email, you might get a Slack notification, a webhook. There could be all sorts of communication things going on. That's all under communication. Finance. Now, that's anything to do with subscriptions. Somewhat simple, right? It does what it says. And analytics. So I'm going to look at building some analytics so that you can know how many times has viewed, how many people, what's percentage of applicants to views, and all of those sorts of things. And so we're going to look at how we can build up a simplistic analytics engine for something like this, which would be fun. So let's get started by refactoring. So what we've got is, if we come down to our roots API and auth, we've got a login controller. That's all we got so far, login. We haven't registered. We'll add that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus in on the screen so you can see the code, and you don't want to look at me. You want to focus on the code. I mean, yeah, I've had my beard trimmed, but it's not that exciting that it should take up the whole screen. So our login controller, what this does currently is we do a query to get the user. We do a quick hash check. Let's delete that and let's do a first or fail. And then we want to add PHP doc for that. Create token. We probably want to ensure that this is a string. It's all looking good. But this is all in line, right? Let me zoom out a little bit so we can see it all. That is our logic at that point. It's not a lot of logic, but there's many places where we're going to want to get a user. There's a few places where we might want to check the input for the user against the password and the response. There's only a few places where we're going to want to do that, but there might be a place, we might want to create tokens in multiple places. So we need to think about how we're going to structure this and what's going to work well. So if we come over to our source directory, what I've done in our composer, we've got our domains, we've got our infrastructure. Now, for those who aren't used to my way of coding, what we've got here is, this is where the contracts or interfaces live. And then this is where the implementation lives. So that's how I split my code out. We've got domains under source for any implementation. Then we bind to the infrastructure itself. So if I come over to source, you should be able to see this okay. If you can't see it, let me know and I can zoom in a little bit more. So we got identity. We can probably get rid of this in a second because we won't need it. So what we're going to want at first is we're going to want a way to get a user by a field, right? It's going to be generic. There's lots of different places where we might want to get a user by different fields. So if we come over here and we can create a queries directory, we can say we want to be able to fetch a user via column B. It's going to be an interface. Fetch user by column contract. It's simplistic right now. We can refactor things out as we get more specific. This will have a handle method. We are going to have a string for the column. And if we go look at the users table itself, the only real identifiers is the ID, name, or email, really. So the value is always going to be a string. Now, if we come back to a controller, find or first or fail is going to return builder, model, or null, basically. So we can add the return type of builder, an eloquent builder, model, or null. However, I don't know if this is going to allow me to use generics. Complain. No, it's not. We'll also add in a user. Yeah. So we'll add a comment of fetch a specific user by an identifying column. Why do I always do Y's instead of a U? So this is the database column to check, and this is the database value. Use. What am I going to make PHP Storm look like this? This is just the PHP Storm new UI. Disable it. Oh no, don't want to restart. I can compact it. Probably don't want to compact. But yeah, it's just a new UI. It's in beta. It's really, really good. So if I grab that, I can now go to the domain for identity, create a new queries, and add this query in. So we're going to create a new PHP class called fetch user by column. This is going to implement a contract, add that method stub. What we're going to want to do is turn the user, start the query, where the column is a value, first or fail. It's relatively simple, but it's a lot more repeatable. So how do we get this implementation working inside of our logging controller? That is what a lot of people will struggle at the first stage, and that's where we're going to lean on the dependency container for Laravel. So if I come over to my app provider, my app service provider, what I've done is I've registered additional service providers in my register method. Don't need to boot anything. Actually, what I will do is model should be strict if this app environment isn't production. This is not a public repo, no. This is content from streams is typically reserved for GitHub sponsors as a way for me to kind of thank them for everything that we've done, basically, and all the support they give me. So we need to come over to the identity service provider, which is a binding service provider here. And what this will have, it will have a public array of bindings. So this is where we're going to register all the bindings for our domain. So we want to be able to fetch user by column and fetch user by column, and it's in this format. You've got the contract, the implementation. So I can take this, come over to the logging controller. Now you can add this into here, but I don't like to. The way that dependency injection should be working is that you're using the constructor if you're talking traditional, this is how things should work. Because it allows me to private read only, drop that in there and say that this is my query. Now I'm doing it the other way around. So I'm able to get my query, make it read only. And the way that that works is that when Laravel is trying to create this controller to call the invocable action, it will pass it through its dependency injection to make it, which will iteratively go over any dependencies in the constructor and try and build out any of these. Now, if this had, or this here had a private constructor, it would fail to build because it isn't able to create this because this is private. But we aren't doing that, so it's fine. But it allows me to add more dependencies within here should I need to. If I wanted to use a repository pattern, I could inject the repository into here should I need to. And I might show you an example of that in a little while. So here's this. This isn't being used currently. So what we can do instead is say this query handle, the column that I want to use is email, and the value is going to be email being passed in the string. This is going to give us a user, and it means that we are no longer relying on Eloquent directly within here. So what ways we can test this is to use architecture tests. We're using pest, so we can create a new PHP file in here, arch test, test that controllers do not interact with Eloquent directly. So we are going to expect that app models not to be in app HTTP controllers. I quickly just run my tests. We got some failures on the arch test. Ooh. Let's go check the docs for that quickly. Have a look at the architecture testing. Not to be used in. We do. Yeah, the validation's all done elsewhere. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly clean up some of these tests. As a to-do. That should be fine. To-dos here, that's all fine. Let's go look at this. Lots of to-dos. So, in a few places, we are already interacting with Eloquent. Oh, wait a minute. That's to be used in. So, we are failing in a few places. So we can work on resolving those. So we've done it here for our identity. This is being pulled in, it's been bound, it is working nicely. I did write tests, but I don't think I committed it. So I'll have to do some sort of merging at some point. So other ways that this is happening is in our profile, show controller. This is where we're fetching the authenticated user from app queries fetch authenticated user. So again, that is as part of our identity, right? So we can come down to infrastructure, identity, queries. If I grab that, what I can do is I can just refactor. I can create the contract so it's bound. Fetch authenticated user, contract. What this is going to need is a handle method. And that is it. So that this refactor, and then I can move this class, and I want to go to domain. Identity. Refactor. I can tell this to implement contract. It is already in place. It's all doing what it needs to do. So on my show controller, this has already been changed, but we want to swap this for the contract. Back down to our provider for the binding. Anytime that we want to get the authenticated user, we want to resolve that instance. So now we are not using that part. We can run our tests again. Still got a couple. So if we come up to the update, got some type issues going on here. That's not too bad. Are we using app models for anything here? No. Opportunities we are. This query, apparently not. So why is this complaining? So if I just do a quick wildcard search on this factory, update user, login controller. So it's still being used on the login controller somewhere. Here. Don't want that. Oops. That is causing an issue there. So now if we run our tests again to make sure, we're now doing good. So we've refactored a couple of things, but not too much. Our login is now using the domain to see how we can get the user. Next, we want to do some stuff with the domain around how we're going to check the user. We want to do the hash check inside identity. So this is going to be another way to do it. Well, how could we do this? Ideas on naming. Hello, Ludovic, Laravel Jutsu, another awesome Laravel-based YouTube channel. If anybody hasn't already subscribed, please do. Show him some support. Although I will mention most of his content is in French, so unless you understand French, you may struggle. So when we're doing hash checks, what we're going to have inside identity is, it's not really a query. It's not really a command because we're not doing any write actions. How would we classify this? I'd probably call this a validator of some description. And I'd probably call this a password validator. And what we're going to have, this is an interface. We're going to have a handle method again. I like using the handle method because it's very descriptive. Hello, Joel. Welcome from Brazil. We are going to have a value being passed through. If I just come back a second, what we're going to want to do is we're going to see a field and a value. What's this take as arguments? Value and hashed value. Okay, so string value and string, we just call it hash, and we're going to say ball on that one. So if we grab this, we're going to come over to the domain again, down to identity, and we're going to create some validators. Create a new validator for this. It's a completely made up name, so please do not comment on that one. It's just something spur of the moment that I'm thinking about. So what we want to do is we just want to do a quick return on the hash check. The value is value and the hashed value is the hash, and that's it. However, what's going to bug me about this is that we're using the hash facade when we're using everything else is using dependency injection, but we'll get around that. Let's get this working first. So come back to our provider, another service provider, and what we're going to do down here, we're going to start just kind of commenting these a little bit. Password validator here, and these top ones, these are going to be our queries, validators. Later on, we're going to have some commands, and we're going to have other things going on as well. So there's a few different things that we're going to have. So now if we come back up to our controller for the login, what we can then do is pull in that as the validator. A request validation is being done over here. So what we can do instead is, if this validator handle, can literally just copy that part in, because then all we're doing is moving something somewhere else. Then we can just grab that. We're going to move that up there and delete that. So we're doing something different here. Cannot access password. That is fine, because that's just a minor issue. So our validator should handle. What we're going to do is a serve, come over to Insomnia, and we're just going to test our login. Ooh. Make sure we've got our records in the database. Did we actually add that to this either? Let's just go and double check that. Yes, we do. Login controller. Ah. There we go. We've got a new token. And we are able to use that token inside of our environment to then fetch the logged in user's profile. That validator is working. This user handling is, getting the right user is working. Then we've got token and create a token. So this is where an action is going to come in. So if we come down to identity, we can then create commands, and an API token is part of the identity for a user, right? So we can create a new PHP interface in here, and it is going to be called create token for user. And what we're going to do is public function handle. We're going to pass in a user, and we're going to pass in name, and this is going to return a new access token. That new access token is part of Laravel Sanctum. So what we can then do in our identity, we can create our commands. Create token for user. This implements this. And then what we can do is wrap this in a transaction. Return db transaction. We'll attempt it twice. Callback is going to be a simple function where we have the user create token, and the name is name. This can be static, and it will return a new access token. So this creating token is now abstracted. Come over to our binding, add it in as a command. There's a reason I do it this way, which I will show you very shortly. I'll add it here, private, and what we can do here is this command handle where the user is user and the name is going to make sure that the IP is cast to a string. I'm only using IP because it's why not, basically. So let's test that login again, make sure it's still working. We're looking good. So why would I do this? If I just create a quick command, we're going to load in our identity and we're going to say create token. So instead of repeating myself every time I need to create a token, which could be in a couple of places, we're going to come down to console, commands, create token. We're going to say make token, create a token for a user. And the argument that I want to be able to pass in is email, the email for the user. So let's just quickly run a make token. We need to pass through the email. That is running. So what we can do, if we look back here, we're going to want to be able to fetch user by column. This is our query. We're going to break this onto a couple of different lines. Then we're also going to want to create a token. So the user that we're going to get is going to be query handle. Column is going to be email. The value is going to be argument email. So we can say this. We can use the components so that we can use term wind, and we're going to say info. Most things are info when I'm using it, to be honest, because UI is hard, even when it's CLI, right? Looking up user or email. I'm just going to leave it like that. So no results. So what we can do instead, we can wrap that in a try. We're going to catch anything that's throwable as an exception. And what we can do this component's error. The string that we want to pass through is the exception get message, and then we can return command failure. So the query results model. It's a UI. It's CLI. These things happen. So we tried to get the user, we failed, no problems. But if we do get it, then we can say this component's info string user found. Moving on. And then if we actually use my email, which is as for a user found, moving on, then we can say that the name that we want is this component's ask. Question that we're going to ask is, what do you want to name this token? At this point, it's awesome, for example, and then we can say, okay, let's try to get a token. To create token, say command handle user is user, name is name. We can again catch anything throwable as an exception, and then this component's error that we want to pass through is the exception get message, and return and failure. And at this point, components info, the string that we want to pass through is token created. Please store this as it will only be displayed once. And we can have this component's 2-column detail. The first one is this is your API token, and the second one can be, zoom back in, can be token, plain text token. So we're going to call it Steve, and there's my API token, and we can confirm that by coming over to our personal access tokens, and we have one called Steve. We've got a couple here, but we've now got them available. So the reason I wanted to show that, it's not the most useful demo. However, what it does show is that we don't actually have to repeat any code. It is very similar to how we're handling things in our login controller, other than the password aspect. We're, in this command here, we're assuming it's an admin user because they've got access to a CLI, so we don't have to ask for a password. But it just shows how useful that code can be. So if we just move on from there, we've got the password validator, password contract, console commands. So this update user, this is perhaps our next step that we need to relook at. This is where in our controllers profile update, we are looking at updating a user. We're updating the user's identity. So what we need to do is look at this. So this user handle, fetch authenticated user, well, we don't really want to do that. We want to use a different one. And again, this command handle, and then we're going to return a refreshed version of the user. So now we can refactor this quite easily. We can swap this to the contract. That's automatically moved over to the domain. This update user, all we need to do, grab this. Final classes. We always want final classes. So let's come down to our domain again, our identity and our command. What we want to do is have an update user contract, which will have a public function handle method. It'll accept that and it will return a boolean. Have we successfully updated? Basically is what this is going to ask. This profile payload is coming from our application right now. That is fine. It is part of our application because we're using it to transform a HTTP request into a data object that we can then use. That's my justification. You might justify it differently and say, no, that belongs in the domain, in which case, feel free. There's nothing wrong with that. So now I can come over to this update user. And say that this implements update user contract, automatically working. But what we need to do is we want to refactor this and we want to move the class back to domain. Identity commands. Move it. And that's it. That's all we needed. Update controller. We also want to use a contract. We don't actually want to use the domain in our implementation code. We want to be using the infrastructure, the more abstract, so that we can lean on the application to provide us the implementation that we need. So that now works. And we don't actually need to update anything else because that it just does what it's needed to. We've got the user refresh. That's how we're getting the user. We will rename this query. And we're going to shorten that because I hate it when it does that. So this query handle, fetch authenticated user, not a problem. If it fails, then the exception handler will grab it. Policy, you want to look at policies today. What could we do around policies? It's not the first time you've asked, is it? Okay, so that is now working. What we're going to do, we're going to run our tests, make sure that architecturally we're still passing. Excellent, we're good. So, in that case, what we want to do is if we come up to our migrations, companies has a user ID. Okay, so we want to create a position now, right? So let's look at V1 opportunities. We're going to create a new one. We're going to do a post request to our URL, and it is going to be V1 opportunities. We're going to create one. So we'll add the headers. We want to accept application JSON. We are going to pass through the content type of application JSON. We want our connection to be kept alive. our content encoding, we want to accept gzip later on. We haven't implemented it now. And then for now, I'm going to say that is it. Send it. Post method is not supported. That is fine. We can implement that. So if we come down to our routes, API, v1, opportunities, we want to do a route post. We're going to give this a name of store. And we need to create a new controller. Under v1, we're going to create a store controller that is both invocable and we want to generate a pest test at the same time. So we can pull this in, store controller, simplify that, come over to that. What we're also going to want to do is make a request, v1, store request there. This is going to pull it in. And that store request, so we can get rid of that and that. So in our store request, let's go have a look at provisions. What we need is all of this information. So in our store request, we know that name is required. It should be a string. We're going to have a minimum of 2, and the maximum is going to be 255 because we're using a varchar. Next, status. Status, again, this isn't really required because it's got a default. So we can add that as nullable, but we want this to be valid enum. And type, again, is pretty much the same. So we can validate against that. This is going to be a position type. Got a default. Good. Spring remote. Okay, so location is, I'm going to say required. Must be a string. Minimum of 2. Maximum of 255. Description we need. So description is required and it must be a string. We can work on extending that later. Salary, we kind of need. Hello, yes, I'm Invisible Steve. I'm trying to allow you to focus on the code. If I put my face here, you might not see everything, but we'll test it. Can you still see? So, salary. How do we want salary to be passed through? Realistically, it's going to be an object. So if we come back to here and we just go to Laravel docs quickly and go to validation rules, validation for now, there is available validation rules. Which is the one that we want. There's a way to do using, no, not that. Array, no, back. Validating arrays. So there's that. User username, nested arrays. So we can just kind of dot notate it, which is kind of handy. So salary amount is going to be required. We always want to say that's required. I believe it's integer. And then we're going to want the salary dot currency is again required, and a string. We'll have to look at custom validation to ensure some of this. Again, it is required. It is also got to be an enum that is salary frequency. I think you should validate if salary is an array first. I mean, yes, I suppose you can do. Salary is required, and is an array. There you go. So that should cover all of that. We're also going to want to pass through the company. Company is a requirement because they might manage multiple. And job title we need to pass through. Title for job title, again, we're going to say required. How do we want to do the validation around job titles being passed through? Realistically, we might do first or create. Because this is API based, you know, do we want to have to do a lookup of job titles to then put it in? It could get messy. So string min1, min2, max 255 again. So job title, and user is going to come from the the authenticated user, basically. So that bit is all fine. We can validate against that. Where is our screen? Here we go. Let's go. 404 not found. V1 opportunities. So let's do a quick A root list. Post to V1 opportunities. That is probably just a typo, knowing me. Not found. What could be causing that? Let's make sure there's nothing to do with that. Doing a post request to V1 opportunities. It's not being overwritten by anything. That is strange. Why could that possibly be failing? Because that is a very strange error to be getting, right? Very, very strange indeed. Let's go and have a look at this. See how that's been loaded in. So here's opportunities. then loading in. Let's make sure spelling is all correct. So back that last slash. Opportunities, root post. This as well, middleware, allow, post. That is super strange. Is it the URL that's different? No, it's the same URL. Preparing a request to that. So if we just come over to here, and we're just going to do that. So that works. Let's have a play. Why is that getting a 404 not found? There's no other middleware going into this, is there? I'll have a look at the middleware to make sure. I've commented out treble for now because I want to make sure that I'm not logging lots of debugging stuff. All of that won't affect the not found. The allows okay. Doing a post request. Yeah, that's clear. Restart the server. That is so strange. Forget all, I'm getting them. If I do this, I'm not. So strange. Like, what could possibly be causing it? Let's, I don't know, test and tinker well. So HTTP, we're going to do a post to v1 to there, and we're just going to get the status. Why are we getting a 404 from here as well? That is so strange. I must have done something somewhat obvious. I am using localhost. Where is it? Where did it go? Where's my code? Here's my code. Place that. Opportunities. I'm getting a random 404. Why is this route not loading? Let's just update everything, clear everything that I can possibly think of getting in the way. V1 opportunities. V1 opportunities. Serve. Let's put that to a get. A 200. But for some reason, this is just being ignored. What could possibly be causing that? Roots, prefix opportunities, v1. It's definitely a post request. Allowing post requests through to it. I change it to a. This is like horrible. Why would I need to ever want to do this? But we're going to do a get request and we're going to say /create. That's getting a 404 as well. Okay, so do a post request. There's a store controller. There's nothing that could cause any effect here. This is so strange. I'll just try and do things manually. V1 opportunities is both spelt the same way. Just grab that. Don't want to do that. It's redirecting. Ooh. $422. Okay, so there we go. That is so strange. It was the accept header. I'd put too many C's in the accept header. So that is why. Okay, so now we can add the body. Right, back on the road again. We want the name to be, what could this job title be? Live stream champion. The location, we want the location to be remote, as always. Description. We need someone awesome. Salary is going to be the amount currency, GBP, and the frequency. Company. This is where I actually need to go look at the database for an ID. Can grab this one. And the title is going to be yeah. Boom, we passed validation. So the next thing we want to look at, what this whole exercise is going to be for, is we've passed validation. We now want to do a check. We want to ensure that the user creating this opportunity owns the company. So we'll make a policy. Position policy model is position. We can come over to app policies, position policy. We can delete everything other than create for now. So we've got a user, and we are also going to be passing through a company. So this, we can just do a really simple company user ID is the same as a user ID. This is going to fail on static analysis because of magic methods right now, but I'm not too focused on that. No, it's not a position policy, is it? It's a, let's refactor this to a company policy. Refactor, rename, company policy. Okay, done. So now we just need to register this in our auth service provider. Be sure it's this way around. Putting this out. Good. Type of app. On here, no, it's the magic methods. I mean, I don't know whether adding a mix in for model resolve. No, yeah. I'll fix it later. It's not vital right now. The code will still work. So what we want to do is get the logged in user. That's kind of like our first thing. So once we've got the logged in user, a private read-only fetch authenticated user as a query. We can say that the user is this query handle. User can create. What's it again? You can do something like user can create. Do it this way: company query. Find. At this point we've already validated, so we can just do kind of like a request thing on the company string. Let's just quickly go through and test this. We'll go through refactoring it in a little bit. We don't want that. We want this. No query results for model user. So the reason that this is happening is because in our routes, we actually need to say that this is an authenticated route. So we can grab that. And we're also going to want to say auth sanctum. An authenticated header. Error is the token. Again. We are looking good. And what we're going to do is grab this, and we're just going to try and dump on whether the user can do this. So, yes, it can. The user can create that company. Or create things for that company is the way it's working right now. Okay, so what we do at this point, we're going to do it the non-clean way first. Like if I'm pretty sure you can do like a gate check using the facade. Gate check. Create company. So if the user can't do that, then we want to return an error, basically. If they can, then we want to create the opportunity and then return a response. So this is kind of our approach. Yeah, sorry, no, I don't use Laravel IDE helper. It creates too much meta stuff for me at the minute. It kind of gets in my way. Right, what's next? What is next? Let's have a look at how we can clean this up. So gate, this will this is going to return an access gate, so we should be able to resolve the gate contract. So how do we want to do this? This is technically going to be part of our domain for the identity, right? We're checking if someone can do something. That's kind of evolving around our identity. So what we probably want to do is create something like an authorizer, perhaps. Creating up names. So authorizer, probably spelled wrong, but we'll figure that one out. I'm going to go identity authorizer contract. And say public function, something like create company model, company pool, something like that. I'm making this up on the fly, so it might not be perfect. You can use all of those different helpers. You can do like an abort if and all of those sorts of things, but I'm trying to make this different from an architectural perspective for educational reasons. So if we grab this, we go identity authorization contract, come over to identity. We're going to create an authorizer in here. Identity authorizer. This is going to implement that contract. What we want to do is pull in the gate into the constructor. So public function construct. And what we could do is have a private read-only gate contract gate. We can make this read-only, and then what we can do is return this gate check. The abilities we want to check is create, and the arguments is company. That's kind of all we want to do there. It is super random. Never tried this before, so let's wait and see. We're going to add a new one down here, authorizers. Identity authorizer. Let's grab that. Come back to our show controller. Private author Either really got to think of better naming. So let's first, we're getting an error there, and here we're just going to return good to go, just so that we can kind of see the difference. We're good to go because we are the right user, and then if we weren't the right user, we would then see an error. So let's refactor this to say this authorizer. Why is that? Okay, I'm just going to grab this company query quickly. Find to string gone. Company, has to be the company. This should still return the same thing. Yes, it does. So then we can do a there. Go. We are good. That's now checking if the identified user can create a company. Then we can kind of expand upon this later and say, create opportunity, create this, create that, do this, do that. It's all in one place, bound back to the gate through kind of abstraction. So we need to kind of be able to get the company from the request or look up through the request. So this is where we need to look at how strict on DDD do we actually want to go? That is the question, because if we're going to be really strict, then we shouldn't allow the identity domain to query directly through the kind of like the hiring. So we'd need to create like a bound service so we can go through and do stuff. Let's follow that route first. Services. I'm going to also copy that down there. This is going to have a hiring service contract interface. Here, we can then create hiring service, hiring service contract, and then bind that in the container, come back down to providers. The hiring service. So what we want to do is in our hiring service, we want to say, okay, so we want to be able to say public function company. And we're going to pass through a string as a name, and we should return company or model or null. Yeah, so I completely agree with sticking to the default Laravel architecture and directory structure for your average project or product. However, if you know you're going to scale it out dramatically, you want to do something slightly different. So this service is going to wants to be able to get a company. What this could do, we say company query where it's actually the name. So we're just going to call this value. here, that's value, and we're going to do a first or fail. So that's one way we could do it. The other way is inside hiring, is to create a query that we then call from within our service here, or a repository, or so many different ways. But the key thing we want to do is, if we're talking across domains, we want to do it through a centralized point so that we know what's happening, we can control it, it's following a specific pattern that's bound, and our implementation can be resolved. The whole focus of the way I approach this is to make sure that I'm using the container as much as possible, where I'm relying on a contract, on an interface, to pull out the implementation that I want to use. That is my main focus. So treble is very default right now, but we are looking at extending that moving forward. So now I can come over here and I can say private service, rest that part, and I can say, instead of doing that, I want to say this service company pass through the company. Now it should be absolutely fine, because I'm not leaning on eloquent, I'm leaning on something that's in my domain that's being pulled in through this. So to double check, we are good to go. Obviously, I will eventually write actual tests for this. The Steve effect. Yeah. Oh, I've actually got some stickers coming. Let me see if I've downloaded them to show you. Downloads, no. Documents, no. Let me go find them. They are super cool. Let me see who was talking to me about it. I can't remember where it was. Darn it. I tweeted it. There you go. You can see it on Twitter. Where's my browser gone? Here. I tweeted it yesterday. At some point. Here we go. I've got the Steve head, and I've got the approved by Steve through Treble. So it's awesome. Oh, you're in Croatia. That's awesome. Okay, so we can send that. That's good to go. Blah blah blah. Where were we? This part. So realistically, returning an error, we want to have a specific sort of response. So we've got our responses, got some resources here, got some responses here. So we're just going to create a new response quickly. API error response. This is going to implement responsible, and it's going to return a JSON response. Nothing out of the ordinary. And we want this to be close to JSON API spec as possible, right? But that's APIs. That's weird. My face is missing. Yeah, I know. It's because I'm ugly, basically. They didn't want my face to represent the brand. I actually don't know. So we're going to have a title. We're going to have a private read-only string description of the issue. We're going to have a private read-only status for the status code. That is going to default to the internal server error. And then we're going to have something else, which I will create shortly. At the minute, I'm just going to add it as a string. And that string is going to be the code. So The way I like to do this, you like my face. Thanks, Rich. It's because we used to work together. That's it, isn't it? So I need an enum. This is a new enum. We're going to have this as error code, an enum. This will return a string. So you can have a case auth 001. This is auth 001. We're going to have a case auth 002. This is auth 002. You get the picture. Finally, we're going to have a case auth 003. This is going to be auth 003, and we'll expand on this shortly. Error code doesn't have a default. We always want to make sure we pass that through the section. So we can then go return new JSON response. Data is an array that we're going to build up. Status is this status value. So what we want this to have, we want the title to be this title. We want the description to be this description. The status is going to be this status value, and the code is going to be this code. This is a basic one, basic implementation for now. We're going to make that read-only. It's going to mess up all my spacings. I hate it when it auto does that. I'm not writing Java. I don't need tidy white lines. Just give me it. So return a new API error response. This is going to be responsible. So we'll worry about that in a minute. So we want our title first. Our title is going to be unauthorized. Right, technically this is forbidden. The description is going to be you are not permitted to perform this action. Status, actually no, we need the code first. Code is going to be error code or 3, and then finally the status is going to be status forbidden done. So how am I looking? Somewhere over here. Here we go. This is, yeah, that's fine. I'm not worried about that. This is what I need. And this, here we go. We've got auth 003. How do you do the Catharino? Why authorize that over gate policy? Because I want to abstract it out to my domain, the identity domain, so that I can kind of more of an experiment and showing people really. So this auth 003. So how can we make that better is probably my first question. And the way we can make that better in my mind is if we look at creating a resource. Make a resource, and we could say API error resource. There we go. So this API error response could now take a resource instead, which might make it easier. And if we come down to HTTP resources, API error resource, this is a JSON API resource, which we don't want for this. We want this to be a JSON resource and a JSON resource. So we want to have a toArray method. public function to array that accepts this, basically. That's going to just return an array, nice and simple. Now, we want that. Like this. And then to kind of fix the typing aspect of it, we can just do a property read, string title, property read, string description, property read status for status, and property read code for code. That bit is all good. Title. I'm going to pass it in as an array, so I'm going to go with docs way for this part right now. Be a resource. So then this bit, we want to grab this array. I mean, it makes no difference really, but new API error resource. Actually, no. What I want is this private JSON resource as data. And this is going to be resource is this data. Why is that erroring? Wait. There we go. And we want the private status. There we go. That fixed that. Then this will do that. Then in our controller here, we want to grab this, and we're going to say data is a new API error resource for the what am I doing? Right, let me go back and copy that. So new API error response. Data that I want to pass through is a new API error resource. There we go, cleaning that up. And the resource I want to pass through is an array. This. Source. Just fix this up. Eventually, I'd probably abstract a lot of this as well. A lot of this is typically actually moved to the handler, but no. I'm being Steve right now, I'm playing. So the API error response gets an API error resource, which takes in this array, which will then come over to here and do that, and do this, and do that. Oh, let's see if that actually worked. Title on array. Okay, so that isn't working. How could we do this? Suppose we could do like resource title. Now a minute and see if it actually just loads up. Yeah, that will load up if I do it that way, but it's not really the way I wanted to do it. No, I'm going to stick with it for now, and we'll kind of refactor and play with it another time. Resource description. Resource status value, resource code value. That's still working, as is exactly as expected. The only thing I need to make sure that I do, internal server error. I need to make sure that this is being passed through here. Forbidden, all matching up, good. You shouldn't need to return a resource and a resource and a resource. I know I'm playing. I'm hacking on the idea of how I can kind of work with this. So how do we really want this to work? Because this is a little bit messy, right? This isn't ideal. This is maybe a little bit cumbersome. How could we really handle this? One way would be to come over here and say, okay, we want to create an error payload. This is going to be our way. So we're going to have public function construct. We're going to have a private read-only string for the title, private read-only string for the description, private read-only error code for the code, and a private read-only status for the status with a default of status internal server error. We'll make that read-only. So we can then swap error payload. We can then pass that through instead of an array. That would replace that. This resource I don't think is needed, so we can come back to here and maybe instead we can say we could get an error payload. And then on this we could say to array. So we can then have a method on here to say public function to array. So we're standardizing this output nicely. Title is this title, description is this description, status is this status value, and the code is going to be this code value. That resolves that issue so that this data accepts something different. Let's say new error payload, and the title is forbidden. This description is that. Status is status hidden, and the code is error code or 3. Drop that data. That should then work. Sort those arguments quickly. There we go. And make sure that still works. All looking good. So we can delete that resource because we don't actually need or want it really. That. Over to our controller. We don't want that. We want that. And we don't want that. So we're now getting an error payload. And we're going to want to kind of simplify this in some way. So we could probably have a messy though. Public static function generate. I have a string for the title and a string for the description. We'll return an error payload. Eventually we'll return a new error payload, but the title is title and the description is description. So how can we possibly do this? We could start to use enum attributes. So we're going to create one called match. This should work unless that's a reserved keyword. Refactor this. We're going to rename this one to match code. This is an attribute. Simplify that one. So that this, if we pass through, we want to match the code for this, and what we want to pass to is if we ever get forbidden, like that. Case forbidden. Can't remember now. Match code 2D is cool. So public function. No. Public read only string value for now. There we go. Make it read only. That's all good. Error payload. So error payload forbidden. This is interesting. Because what we're going to want to do is data error payload generate where the title is forbidden and the description is you're not permitted, so that we can just do lots of automatic lookups and keep client code clean. So that is that part. That is how we want it to look eventually. So when we get to here, we want to do some kind of lookups. So error code new weapon error code. Data should probably be payload later, but that's not what I'm worrying about right now. Match forbidden. Then we're going to do a new concerns, new trait, and access attributes. So what we're going to want to do here is have a public static function from attribute from code. This is going to return an error code. I'll expand on this later. This is where we need to dive into reflection a little bit. I have done this. Can't remember where I did it. I think I also wrote about it. I wrote about this. Okay. Using attributes to add value. I did it for permissions. Let me just grab that and we'll just go through it that way. So we'll see how we can refactor this. Import class. So we want to get ourselves constant kind of got to pass one through. Is there a way that I can just look up based on an attribute? Okay, might have to use reflection. New reflection class, the object or class is going to be self. Reflection attributes. And for now, I'm going to dive dump on attributes. Let's do some kind of hacking on this and let's just see what we're getting. Class reflection, get the cases. Ooh. Error code from value, but I'm not actually passing through the value. Because the from value will give me this, and I don't want to pass that through unless I'm trying to think of a nicer way to pass this through. Like we could pass the title, or we could pass through. Okay, we'll do it differently. Error code. We're going to get the code, and from the code we want to get the title. Code get title, something like that. So this match code is a no. Instead, we're going to have title. Again, this is an attribute. Simplify that. Public function construct. Read only string value. Make that read only so that on our error code, not that match code, instead we're going to have title be hidden. We can even go further and do the same thing with the description. But we can go public function construct public read-only string value. Make that read-only. That on our error code. Then we could even add in a description of you are not permitted to perform this action. And I suppose, can attributes work with enums? That is going to be an interesting one. Okay, so let's pass through a status. Error status, we're going to call it. Again, this is another attribute. This is where it fails. This is where my plan fails. Public function construct. Error reporting has got to be the most painful part of building an API from my experience. No, that's good. So I could also pass in the default of internal server error. That would work. So my error code, the error status could actually be status forbidden. Oh, look at that. So now all I've got to do is, if I just ignore some of these what I've just created for now, store controller, generate code is error code 03. Drop that, maybe to generate, ignore that, and for the error payload, title could be code get title. All of that. Description could be code get description. It is code. Status is code status. Now I can add these methods of get title and the best way to do this is get attributes. If I come back to here, we should call undefined method get title, error code get title, error code use can access attributes empty. So we want to, I don't want to have to pass this through. I don't want to have to pass through the back enum into it. It kind of defeats the niceness of this. I hate that this is a trait. Yes, so do I, but I might use it on a couple of things. So we'll have an enum here. Could get constant for title, maybe. No. What could we do? We could get constants. Let's just. Is it has plast? Yes. No. Maybe. No, that's not what I need. Get reflection constants. No. It's got to be a nice way to do this, right? Maybe it's something for another stream because I've been going for almost 2 hours. Yeah, I hate with this as a trait as well. Get attribute. It should be able to get attributes, but it's not. Come back empty. So if I do reflection class, I'm still new to a lot of this. New instance. What do I get if I do this? Switch out the class on line 15. What do I want instead? I want to be able to. What reflection options are there? Reflection enum. Object or class. Reflection is then going to give me attributes. Still no. Reflection. I've got the reflection enum. That has been pulled in. That is working. So once I've got the reflection enum, cases. I want to get the attribute. It's just giving me an array of cases. And I should already have my instance. I want to get attributes off of the past instance. Cases is going to give me one thing. No. Attributes just isn't cutting it, is it? And this, I can't remember what I did. For the life of me. Get cases should give you a reflection case. No, it's giving me an array. Oh, get case. Case doesn't exist. It's I might have to do this off screen or on another stream so I can really look into it. In find array key 0. Okay, I'll do this on another stream. I think it's something that I need to dig into a little bit more, find the best way to get it. So thank you for staying with me for that long and painful journey. No, get case this doesn't work. Let it try. I'm going to play, I'm going to tweak. But thank you for joining me. That was a lot of fun. We did a lot of different things there, and we're going to see what we can do next time. Let me know on Twitter if you want me to do another one this week. Otherwise, we can do it next week. Just let me know. Other than that, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you thought, anything you want to see. Thank you very much. I'm going to go eat some lunch. Goodbye.